Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm so excited to have Ms. Vickers here from WXII. It's exciting moments in time to have you here today.
Thank you
You're
so
looking
much.
wonderful as always. Thank you for being here.
Same to you. I really appreciate the invitation.
Definitely.
I've seen some of these, and I know I'm going to be in the hot seat, but I'm going to put you in the hot seat too.
You're going to flip it, huh? You're going to come to my house and make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so tell us about, we see you on the television station. We see you at the 6 o'clock hour, 11 o'clock hour as an anchor person for XI. So tell us, who are you? Tell us about you. Where you come from?
Well, I'm originally from New York. My parents moved here from Jamaica. Jamaica. And at the end of the day, I've lived in New York, I lived in Charlotte, I've lived in Orlando, I've lived in Maryland for the job, moving back and forth. And I love where I am now. This community has embraced me in a really big way. As you mentioned, I've, worked pretty much every shift at XII from the 4 o'clock, the 5, the 6, the 10, and 11. And I'm happy to be in the seat that I am. I know that it comes with a lot of responsibility too as well. So outside of work, I'm also, I've been an adjunct professor at WSSU. I've also, done a lot of community service projects. I feel like that's what it's all about, not to just sit up there and read.
So how did you end up in Winston though from New York?
Well, prior to WXI, I was at our Hearst station in Orlando, and there was an opportunity, in Orlando, Florida, WESH, and there was an opportunity for me to get back on the anchor desk because I was reporting there. Okay. And I took it. I just I didn't really know where Winston was, even though I worked in Charlotte before.
You know what a great metropolitan of Winston-Salem, the Trey Foe was? What?
No, Trey Foe. No, I did not. I was so immersed in building strong ties and community in Charlotte that was my world. And we ended up moving to Orlando from there, had this opening within the company. And, I did not know that I was going to be here for as long as I have. I'm going on 8 years. Most stations you stay at for maybe a 2-year contract, 3-year contract. But I tell you, there's something about Winston-Salem that's so different.
It's magical.
It is. It truly is. It's different than in Orlando. It's different than in Charlotte. If you have an idea,
it's a piece of heaven.
It truly is.
Right here in Winston.
It is. Yeah. And if you have a concept, an idea, you just everyone is already here that you can build yourself, build community, help other people grow. We've got the entrepreneurial mindset here that I think is missing in a lot of places. Is, if you can think it, build it. And I feel like from the time that I've been here, I've seen a lot of growth.
So what's it like being an African-American female to anchor a news station?
It's a privilege and an honor. It really is, because growing up, I had Brenda Blackman in New York. That's who I would look up and see, and like, oh my gosh, if I could just be Brenda Blackman one day. And as a child, saying that was my thought process. But as I've gone forward, I've saying, wow, I have this great responsibility, because there's going to be a little girl out there or a young man out there, and I say, man, I see somebody that looks like me. I want to be able to help people. Who
was the first to come to 12? I remember Denise Franklin and Wanda Starks.
And Wanda, yes.
Yeah, I remember them. But that's interesting. Yeah. So who would have been the first African-American female to come on 12? Just out of curiosity, one of the things that run through your mind, say,
Yeah, I should actually know who that person is, but but for me, Wanda was very instrumental when I got there, because Wanda took me under. We literally sit right next to each other. Okay. So we were cubicle mates. And when I first got there, she was like, if there's anything I can do, if there's anything I can help you with. And that's not always the case within our industry. Sometimes people come in and they see another Black person as a threat. They come in and see someone like, oh, okay, well, there's only 2 positions for minorities. Right. And here she comes, and now I'm going to be out the door. And that was never the case with Wanda. She's always been someone that I can use as a resource, but has also been very helpful to me in terms of like, hey, can you look at a script, or who should I talk to about X, Y, and Z story? Right. And I've taken that, and also helped to mentor kids that have come through the station in terms of interns, and then also other people who have come after me to be a listening ear and help them navigate through what it's like to be a minority journalist, because it is very different. It's not the same.
So as a minority journalist, when you reporting on certain stories? I mean, do you give them as they happen? Do you give them a slant or spin? How do you see that? I've been having this conversation for the last hour or so on the two pandemics that are happening, one being COVID-19, one being this pandemic of social unrest, social injustice, racism in our society, shootings, killing of unarmed black men. And so as an African-American woman, when stories, news desks come across your news desk, how does it make you feel? How do you report on them? And how do you all choose how you deliver that message to the people? Because what I have seen in my lifetime and just everyday living is that the news, the media is very powerful. How you put the story out or the spin or the slant affects the thought pattern in which the people follow.
It's so true. And it's a great question because at the end of the day, there are people, I get it all the time, even on Facebook, you're fake news or you're not telling the truth or that's not what happened. And I have a responsibility, our station has a responsibility to, yes, be fair and balanced, but also make sure that we are a fair representation of the community that we serve. And what I mean by that is, the same way I can't take a broad stroke and say all cops are bad cops, all law enforcement is bad.
I appreciate that.
We can't do the same thing with the news media, too.
True.
Because there are people like me that's a news nerd junkie. I live, breathe, and it's in my DNA. I want to make sure that we're telling good stories, but we're also being fair and balanced, getting both sides.
Right.
And sometimes you might not have that opportunity based on the story to get every element of a story, but you do the best with what you do the best of what you can with what you have, but then you also make sure you're continuing to reach out. So if I can't get the sheriff to talk about something, we've reached out to the sheriff, we're waiting for a return call. But when
we try to call you back.
Yes,
Yeah,
you always do.
Yeah, we try to.
No, but I was, at the end of the day, I think that there has to be a conscious effort to make sure that we are conveying the news, because we only have a very small period of time to tell a story. And some people look at it as like, well, you have all this time in the world, use the platform. But we have sometimes half an hour to an hour to get all of these stories in that are like maybe a minute to a minute.
So how do you decide
seconds.
which story you're going to air? So with everything happening in this day and time, how do you decide which story? Do you have a system that you say, okay, this one right here draw more looks, more views, this one is more sensationalized? How do you choose from which one you're going to air?
Well, we have our producers in place. We have executive producers. We have these morning meetings, for example. So we get on the call and we pitch our story ideas.
So the producer's the shot caller.
The producer will then say, okay, I want that story in my show. And there have been times at many stations I've worked for where I will call the producer and say, and I'll fight for my story because I will tell them, hey, us doing a story about people not being able to get strawberries, for example, in a pandemic is not a story that someone who can't even afford to get strawberries it's not going to resonate with them. That might be in your wheelhouse, that might be your family tradition, but there are people right now in this pandemic that are hungry, they're unemployed, and, I would rather use their valuable time that they're taking to watch us to tell them how they can get help, where Second Harvest food bank is setting up so that you can get food. You might not be able to go and, there's no offense to any strawberry patches out there or, farmers and things like that. I know everyone's suffering, but they're suffering in a different way. So we have to really be intentional with the time that we have to serve the community and making sure that the people who are those decision makers are of a diverse background, because your view is going to be different than mine. So I think, for example, there was one day when we were talking and you had said, Talitha, we've really got to get our community under control in terms of there are so many kids out there that have not logged on to e-learning. There's so many kids that are out there. We had the 45 vehicles that were stolen. Dozens of vehicles basically were stolen from these dealerships, and many of the suspects were children and teenagers. And then in that conversation, he said, and we have this girl that came up from Atlanta. She just came here to visit and she was shot in the head. we got that press release, and it was 18-year-old shot in the head.
So let me ask you this question. So how do you feel this day and time with all the race relations being strained, being a black woman at a news station? Do you feel that it's a disadvantage or an advantage?
I feel like, for me personally, it's an advantage. I feel other people may see it as a disadvantage because I have received hateful emails, I've received hateful calls, hateful messages saying, get that or I off of the set, off of my television screen. I don't want to see her on television. I won't watch your station anymore. And it's because of the color of my skin. I love the skin I'm in. I am.
That's all right.
At the end of the day, I wouldn't want to be any other complexion. That would not be me, you know? And I feel like the skin I'm in has made me have tough skin, and it's been able to let me see the world through a different lens than other people. So case in point, we get a press release that says 18-year-old shot in the head. Someone might look at that and say, oh, well, look at the neighborhood that person was in. It might be gang related. And they just say 18-year-old shot in the head. I look at that. I'm on the phone. I'm making calls. Come to find out that was an 18-year-old mother of a 3-month-old innocent bystander, was only here for less than 24 hours and was shot in the head, hasn't been able to see her family, sitting in the hospital with a bullet in her head. Family has nothing. They're here just fighting to survive. And this mother is now without her child, and she was an innocent bystander. That goes beyond 18-year-old shot in the head.
Right.
You know, so I think having the 18 years of experience that I have, I know to look deeper than this press release says X, Y, and Z, whereas other people might not do that. So having the experience and also having the voice and being where I come from, I don't care if it's East Winston, you know, downtown Winston-Salem. I'm not afraid to walk into communities because I've been in so many different communities. And you have other reporters at other stations that I've worked for. They're like, oh, send so-and-so to that story. Or they're afraid, or I don't want to do a live shot in this neighborhood because I think I'm afraid for my life. Well, when you're immersed in the community, you know, so-and-so around the corner got your back. They're not going to let anything happen to you. But that comes with service. That comes with time. That comes with experience. And it's no offense to anyone who ever feels like, oh, I'm in a bad neighborhood, or if they don't feel safe, get out, you know. But at the end of the day, that comes with time. That comes with experience. That comes with knowing the community that you serve.
So when you look at the current state of America and the current state of our country and our community, do you see a divide when you see the news every night or help produce the news? What do you see as an African American woman? What do you see?
I see that as a whole, we need to do better. Honestly, like, I really do. I feel like we need to tell the stories of the people who are watching us, the people who are loyal to us. African Americans are some of the most loyal viewers. They like you, they love you. Like you like literally you see someone in the supermarket and they're like, "What up, T, Talitha?" And I'm like, "I don't know you," but they feel like because
they see you on the television, so they feel feel
family.
Kinship. Yeah,
right.
They feel a kinship to you. Yeah.
So I feel a lot of love in that sense, but I feel like we have to be intentional with the stories that we're doing. So like I said earlier, we're not wasting people's time. But I feel like having diverse newsrooms make us stronger, make us better.
Are we diverse in the newsroom?
Are we? We can be better. We are not
you gotta know. I don't want to put you on the spot because I know you
always do.
I know you got to have a job and leave here, right? And currently we full, so I'm gonna strike that question, right? So we are.
We're
better. We're gonna do better.
We need to do better. Here's the deal. I'm
okay,
keep it real with you. At the end of the day,
I hope so.
When there is a job opening at a television station, one of the first things that a minority will do is pull up the website and look under the bios. Before even looking at the station and, the awards that they've won and who's the management team. One of the first things that we will do is look at how many Black people are there, how many white people are there, how many Asian people are there, what is the makeup of that newsroom of people on air. And if they don't have a lot of minorities.
So we lack diversity?
We lack diversity. We do. We lack
diversity. One of the things that I'm very conscious of is that we have to be careful what we feed the public, because the side that you feed the most is the side that becomes dominant. So if the news that you're feeding us, right, is tainted or it doesn't represent us fairly, that could be a problem. So what do you think we need to do then? If you're saying that diversity is missing, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Don't want to put you on the spot, but since you showed up at the table, I thought I'd take the shot. So what do you think we need to do?
I think...
Because news is powerful, would you agree?
1,000%.
Information is powerful.
Information is powerful.
And I'm going to let that go, but go ahead.
Diversity is critical, especially in the climate that we're living in right now.
When you say climate, let's take the gloves off. What climate are we in?
We are in a climate of divide. We're in a climate of people looking for answers. There's a lot of questions that people just, even within newsrooms, whether that's a television station, a radio station, a newspaper, there are so many sources of news and information, whether that's a podcast. People are looking for answers, The same way that we look for answers about COVID-19. How can I protect myself? How can I stay safe? That was, the number one and continues to be very high up there when it comes to news information and how do I protect my family? I don't want this virus. It's, it's sweeping. But there's also another virus that's going on right now.
What's that?
That's systemic racism.
Well, COVID, the coronavirus and racism have two common denominators. You know that, right? They both are contagious and they both are deadly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that we have to
stop the spread of both of them.
We have to. Kimbrough, at the end of the day, if we continue to just check a box, we've got these corporations. I put up I blacked out my Facebook page, Black Lives Matter. Check, my box is checked. I did something. Pat on the shoulder. If people are just checking a box, then what actions are you doing to make sure that it stops? It has to stop. You know what I mean? And it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to go out there and march, pat on the back. I did my part. No, your part is on the job. Your part is having a voice for someone who feels like they can't be their authentic self on the job. Your voice is helping your neighbor who might feel like, okay, I'm not being treated fairly by my other neighbors. Your voice is when you see something wrong in the supermarket, someone being hateful, that's you standing up. We have to have intentional actions behind what we're doing in order to make a change, And I feel like, I did a Facebook post the other day and it was about, teaching our kids, starting with as a seed, As a seed, you have to nurture and you have to flourish and you have to be able to grow that beautiful garden. If we don't teach our kids at an early age, to play with people who don't look like them, or knowing that, or educating kids with books that are not just white books, not just Black books. They're having a diverse from the beginning out the gate. If we don't do that at home and get that good home training and expose our kids to more, then we're going to just continue to have this cycle of hate and fear, because that's taught. That you don't come out like born hating somebody for the color of their skin.
So you think that race matters in the media? Or in everyday life, you think race matters?
Absolutely. Race plays a role in so much of what we go through every single day, And I think what's happening even across our country, the climate that I was talking about,
right.
race is an impact. Look at what just happened in Atlanta with Rayshard Brooks. Race, people are now calling for, they have been calling for, less police brutality. Was that the right decision? Should the officer have fired? You look at Ahmaud Arbery, who was, just jogging through the neighborhood.
Right.
Race played a factor in that. If that were a man of a different complexion, would he have been literally hunted and killed? You know what I mean? We have the videos now to show what is happening. And,
it's clear to everyone that that can see or even has a moral compass that race matters.
Right.
I used to pull my birth certificate periodically. Probably saying, why would you do that? I would lose them. Well, I was going through some old paperwork and I found my birth certificate, one that I pulled years ago, and it had race, my parents' race, It has the child, then it has parents, then it has race. It had colored, right? I was sharing it with the group of people this morning where it had colored on it. Then years later, I stumbled upon it, had to go pull the birth certificate, and it had Negro. And so just recently I went and got one, and it doesn't have one. So I shared that to say that race does matter. And I think that as a people, human race, as people of this country, we have to move away from what you just said, checking the box of race, checking the box of this. To me, I don't think it should matter. We should enter the game treating people as human beings.
Right.
We should have compassion for all people. And so I was just asking you some of those questions because I wanted to know your perspective as a person that has influence. When you said on the news every night, people are listening to you. People hang on every word you say. If you said it, it's like it's got to be true. If the news said it, if 12 said it, it's a fact. And so, you brought up the situation in Atlanta, another tragic situation is happening across our country, another divide, another thing that are happening. And so I'm going to allow you to ask me some questions. I know I've been drilling you for a minute, so I'm going to switch and let you ask me some questions.
So when it comes to, we've seen and heard about from Breonna Taylor.
We have.
George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, going back to Trayvon Martin, going back to Emmett. We've seen a pattern where race has been
the determining factor.
1,000%. In this latest situation that happened in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm sure you've seen the videos. There are several different angles of what played out.
I think I saw what 12 put up. What channel?
Good, because we put out.
I saw what channel 12 put out. Now I'm assuming it's accurate.
It is accurate, top notch.
Go ahead.
But that's the thing. Like, you have to trust your sources.
Well, I'm gonna trust you all. I'm trusting.
So we do our.
Even though you don't have diversity, I'm trusting you. But go ahead.
Stop.
Go ahead.
We are getting better. See, we do have. Here's the thing. We have.
I'm just joking.
Okay.
Go.
We do, but at the same time, on the people who you don't see on television, we can do better. That's management, that's producers, that's, and I'm just being real, at the end of the day. I
appreciate your transparency.
So there's a lot that people, might see.
I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable.
No, you're not making me uncomfortable at all. I'm glad that you did ask the question, because a lot of people don't know that. They're like, there's diversity. There's Talitha, there's Brianna, there's Wanda, there's Margot, there's Devontae.
I thought you guys were very well diverse. I saw you,
Brianna, Wanda, Margot, there's Devontae,
Johnson, everybody.
So
Devontae.
that's what you see in front of you.
Yeah.
But then also behind the scenes, there has to be diversity too, as well. This is my personal. I'm not speaking for Hearst. I'm not speaking for XII. This is just me, Talitha Vickers.
Right.
If you ask me what we could do better, I think we could have more diversity also behind the scenes in terms of. Yes, we have photographers and directors and more producers that have a different background.
Well, I know a few if y'all looking for something.
Sheriff Kimbrough.
Yes.
My question to you
Sure.
is, when you see what has happened over the years and in your experience, especially with Mr. Brooks, this last situation that occurred where he was shot in the back, he wrestled with the officer, he took the officer's taser, and he was running away, shot in the back. And then you also look at George Floyd, where he was restrained and handcuffed, and the officer had his knee in his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Do you feel that, given they're two totally separate cases, two totally separate situations,
True.
was the use of deadly force justified with this Atlanta case with Mr. Brooks?
My personal opinion, he could have did something different. He knew who the guy was. They had identified him. License they had, car they had, and he was running away. He was fleeing away. I don't think, this is my personal opinion, this is not Sheriff Kimbrough, this is Bobby Kimbrough. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of arguments taking place out there in the justice systems, in the courtroom. My personal opinion, he could have did something else. He could have went and got the man later on. Could have issued a warrant for him later on.
I feel like
me in that situation, I wouldn't have done that. I would not have.
Gotcha. When it comes to, see, we're not law enforcement, and the people watching now, I'm not a law enforcement officer, clearly, there has to be so many layers of things that goes through law enforcement's mind. When you don't know the suspect that you're pulling up to, you don't know what is going on. I'm sure you have to assess, but sometimes that assessment comes very quickly. And in the heat of the moment, so to speak, many people wonder what are the protocols that should go into place? What are some of the things that we don't know that happen that then lead to or the I don't know.
Continuum of force.
What is the right and what is the procedure? Like, what are some of the, and I know every case is different, so that's almost like a loaded question. But at the same time, we know procedurally you're not supposed to put your knee in someone's neck. Procedurally.
Totally wrong. Wrong. Procedurally,
when someone, this is obviously not your deputy, not your office. When someone pulls a taser from an officer or a deputy, procedurally, what are you supposed to do? I think that people are grappling with now, okay, is this what we're also marching, people are marching for George Floyd and marching for Breonna Taylor and marching for the Trayvon Martins of the world, the seen and unseen. And then is what happened in Atlanta on that same...
The man was running away. I mean, he was not a threat. He was running away. That's my personal opinion. I think that we're creating a culture of divide. We're creating a culture which is causing so much stress and tension to where people are distrusting the police for so many reasons. We talk about PTSD all the time, post-traumatic stress disorder. Basically, that means that you're suffering from a disorder based on a traumatic event that happened. But also, people are experiencing that every day, black and white. Black people are experiencing it probably at a higher rate, especially young black men. I have black sons that are asking me those same questions that you're asking me. And there's stress to see that. There's stress to see what happened to Floyd. There's stress to see to happen to Ahmaud. That stress to see so many, we could line names up all the way down the street. So that's traumatic stress that's constantly being introduced into the atmosphere every day. So black men, I just got off a phone call before I came in here with someone that felt uncomfortable when they were stopped. And they were saying that the deputy didn't do nothing wrong, it was just that I felt nervous. And what's happening is that's that post-traumatic stress disorder based on what's happening out here in the community, you know? So I can't tell you why the man ran. I can't. Maybe he was feeling stress from maybe he was coming up out of a sleep disoriented. Maybe he was fearful of the police, right? I get it. I get it from both sides. I understand. I see that side and I see this side. But there has to be some common sense, and I know sense ain't common. But there has to be, let me breathe for a moment. And I know everything is happening like that. I've been there where that man was. I've been on raids where someone stepped out of the hallway with a weapon. And in that moment, all those things run through your mind, right? And so what I say is that a lot of times our responses is based on our level of training, heretics, and our experiences. You know, I've shared the story before. We were in Greensboro, and I was an agent. We had a search warrant and an arrest warrant for a gentleman. We hit the door, ran into the house. Guy was in the back bedroom, came out of the room, standing there. He had a rifle in his hand, right? He was standing there with the rifle in his hand. I couldn't articulate that. That was an easy articulation, right? And we were saying, federal agents, put your hands down, federal agents' hands, right? And he just stood there, right? Well, the law don't say I got to wait till he aims at me, right? We had issued 3 commands, right? And he's standing there with a rifle. That was a lethal and deadly threat, right? But just saying that to the man, I could see that something wasn't connecting. And then finally, Manos Rivas, put your hands up. He was Hispanic, right? And he dropped the gun. He wasn't even the man we were looking for. He just happened to be visiting the house that we hit. And when he heard the knock outside the door, he panicked and grabbed a gun, right? That could have been a tragic situation.
In a split second. Could have gone so left.
Long, right? And so people, you know, we had a after action debriefing where we have debriefings. Question was, why didn't you shoot? Why didn't you do that? And I've said, because I didn't feel in danger at that moment, because I knew my skill set. And so I think that a lot of times in life, when our officers and deputies are placed, our men and women that serve and protect go through hell. I have to say that. They do. They see the best and the worst of society. And in split-second decisions, they have to make them.
When you say I've been there, I feel like you have the lens of Bobby Kimbrough.
Exactly.
You also have the lens of Sheriff Bobby Kimbrough to assess. When you say I've been there before, give me a situation outside of on the job where you felt like you've been there before.
Well, I mean, I was sharing it this morning that I can give you been there where I've been profiled. I can give you instance where as an agent, the guys, if you call them now in the GRO, the Greensboro Resident Office, some that are still there, will tell you about the incident when I walked into the hotel working, and the lady hit the panic button, and 2 white deputies showed up, ready to arrest me for no reason other than the lady hit the panic button because I walked in at time of night, identified myself, told her I wanted to know some information. They can tell you the time we were getting on the airplane at PTI, And as an agent, you have to check in at the desk. So we got to where we were going out of the gate. At the gate, you show the paperwork which says federal agent traveling armed. And so the desk calls down to the plane to let the captain know. So the captain comes off the plane and he sees a white guy and a black guy standing there. He immediately turns and starts talking to the white agent. And what he said was, you got your paperwork. Is that the prisoner is going to be traveling with you? The prisoner. Now I'm standing there in an Armani suit with a pair of Meslin shoes on, right?
Wow.
And a Toomey bag hanging across my back. And I looked at Raz, who was the agent that was traveling with me, and he said, no. That's the agent. Matter of fact, that's the senior agent. Wow. And the guy started apologizing, right? I can give you the time being in Adams Farm on surveillance. And we were out there and profiled again. But I can even bring it closer to home, being here as the sheriff. Mm-hmm. And you could look to the left and they'll tell you the story about me being out on a call one night and my own deputies didn't realize who I was. So I know what it's like to be black in America. Make no mistake about it. I know what it's like to be the sheriff who just happens to be black, right? So when I look at situations, I don't look at them from a law enforcement's perspective as well. In addition, I look at them from being a black man. I have black sons, all 6 of them. One of them is in the Philippines with his family working. And the other 6 are right here, driving around, moving around. When people stop them, they don't know them. That's Sheriff Kimbrough's son. They don't. You've heard me say this before. One of my sons is a dreadlock wearing guy, right? Depending on what day you catch him, you're going to get Martin, Malcolm, or you're going to get Pee Wee Herman, depending on what day you catch him, right? So I understand what it's like to be black. So to answer the question, and I've been on both sides of that coin, where I'm looking at the borough and I got the borough, right? And so...
But how does that make you feel as the sheriff looking, in the last example that you gave me, as sheriff, I've been looking at the barrel from people even on your team that have mistaken you. I mean, as the sheriff, what does that make? How does that make you feel?
Well, what I would tell you is that several months ago, I went in Lowe's about 8 something. I remember they said we're going to be closing shortly, a little bit before 9, 8:40. I said, I got time to get to Dario's. I ran to Dario's in Clemens, left Dario's, and they gave a chase that was in Statesville, headed 40 east. And I said, they coming my way. So I pulled onto the ramp right there in Clemens. A deputy pulled in front of me. And they said they've entered Davie County. Then they said they got off at Harper. So we both flipped around and came up the ramp, turned right there, yeah. Exactly, flipped around, turned left right there, BP on the left, BP on the right, Arby's on the left, Krispy Kreme on the right. And they said, okay, they went down Ida's Road, forget what it was, Middlebrook something, and they ended up on Hampton Road. So I turned left at the CVS and the Walgreens. The other deputy kept straight across that intersection. I turned right on the Hampton. I pulled over in the cut, and they said, they're coming down Hampton Road. And at the time, I said, okay, you know what? Do I stay here, let them do their job, or do I get in the chase? So they passed me, and I flipped around on the car because I was the closest one to the truck,
right?
The SUV. Well, if you know anything about Hampton Road, the vehicle turned left and then shot into that church parking lot right there. The car that was chasing came up and turned right on the stadium. And they didn't realize that the truck had turned in behind the church until when they was going by, they saw it.
But you did.
I did. I was behind the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So when I pulled in behind the truck, the white female that they were chasing, we never knew what the race was because the car was traveling in excess of 100 miles an hour when it came in over the radio. Mm-hmm. So when I jumped out of the truck, my truck, the white female jumped out and started running, right? I stood there. My guy rolled in. I was standing there because when I jumped out, I had my weapon in my hand. I was turned like this, so I was facing the guy from a distance. He had no idea who I was. I don't think he did it in malice. But the fact of the matter, he had his gun out and issuing commands. And then I said, she ran. And by that time, he realized I was the sheriff, right? And so we ended up looking. They found her. So we were having a conversation. So when I came back up the road, the guy was apologetic that
the sheriff, that could have gone so wrong.
You don't have to tell me. I was there. I was the guy that night.
Gosh.
And so I told them, that I was going home because I realized something that night. One, I realized that even though I'm the sheriff, I'm still black in Clemens. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm going home and I'm going to pray because that could have went ugly so many ways. So days later, the joke went around at the sheriff's office that I almost shot the sheriff, right? And so I told the guys, I said, here's what I'm going to tell you. Don't joke like that anymore. I don't want to hear that no more. I said, because that could have went so many ways. So I pulled up at the gas station a couple days later, and one of the sergeants saw me, and he pulled up at the BP, and he said, I'm going to get on the radio and let them know you in Clemens tonight, Sheriff. And I said, listen to me. I said, don't joke like that anymore. I said, let this be the last day we laugh and we joke about that one, right? And me and the guy, I saw him Sunday. He and I talked Sunday. I mean, he had no idea, But I'm saying is that so many things happen just like that. Just like that.
Every day.
Every day. Thank God that he had the mindset to say, okay, let me talk. Because he never saw who got out of the vehicle. He didn't.
Right.
And so adrenaline's are rushing. You've been on a chase, 100
You
miles
could have been
train.
the suspect. He had no idea.
He had no idea. Even though I was a black male in a suit, but that don't mean a bad guy can't be in a suit. I get it. I understand it. Bad guys come in all attires. I get it. But I thank God that he didn't shoot. I thank God that I had enough sense to stay sideways to where he didn't see the gun. He just saw a blade of me. And when he realized who I was, I mean, he was like, oh, shit, that's the sheriff, right? And so, we talked about it around here, the command staff. We've had many conversations about it. This was recent. This was 2020.
And looking at that, well, thank you for sharing that because a lot of
it's
people...
common knowledge around the sheriff's office. I mean, you could have stopped Miss Howell, any of the people, and they would have told you that story. Matter of fact, you could walk through the halls and they'll tell you that story.
Well, for the people who are listening to this and watching, just hearing that from you go through it, you know what I mean? And at a very, I don't want to say a surface level, but just being so transparent and just letting people know that, hey, I have a lens that I have to look through as Bobby Kimbrough. I have a lens that I've got to look through as law enforcement too,
without
as
question.
well. There's so many layers to unpack with that. And in that same vein, I want to ask you, when we look at the layers of our community that we're dealing with and we're trying to unpack from this virus, that people that continues to spread of racism in the community, and not thinking before acting, not thinking before saying things. How do we, as a community, what do you feel like we need to do to get better? Because I've seen people walking hand in hand and protesting, and I think what we're seeing now has never been done before on this scale. And I think that's why it's resonating with so many people, from youth to no matter the age. It's just across the board. It's Europe, it's China, it's everyone coming together saying this has to stop. How do we get better outside of the marches? How do we get better so that somebody's not pulling a gun?
I think that
on the sheriff.
We are in some defining moments in our history. We are in unprecedented times. I've had this conversation on many occasions about a time such as this. We've got to realize that we're in this together. When I saw the march that came past the office, Church Street, several weeks ago, I saw 1,000+ people walk past that window, white, black, Hispanic. I felt proud. That was a proud moment to see all races and people coming together. Here's what I would tell you is that Saturday, on my way back from Greensboro, I stopped and picked my son up from his girlfriend's house. His girlfriend is white. Every other Saturday, I'll let him go visit, and the parents, they're there. So this Saturday, I went in and I talked with her parents, and we were in this conversation about black-white relationships. They wanted to know how I felt about my son dating a white girl. They wanted me to know how they felt about their daughter dating a black man. And we were having a conversation, and a week prior to that, they were talking about wanting to go out to maybe a pizza place together, talking about wanting to go maybe to the movies together. And we were having a conversation about what is the public perception going to be when they see a 16-year-old black male and a 15, 16-year-old white female out together, right? What is the public perception going to be? And I assured him that I had no issues with who my son dated. Love is colorless. I had no issue with, if I did, I wouldn't bring him over there.
Right.
If I did, I would have said something. And so I thought about that, and I said, here we are in the 21st century, right? In 2020, having conversations like that. Doesn't matter who someone loves and the color of their skins. Here we are having a conversation about my son, his girlfriend, feeling, are they going to be safe?
Wow.
If they go out together in public as young kids? Or is it going to cause a problem?
That's the last thing they should be thinking about.
But that's real, though. That's real.
Right.
That's very real.
Oh, I know.
And so while it should be the last thing, it has to be something that they're thinking about. And so the father and I talked, the mother and I talked. As a matter of fact, he's supposed to come visit me today. He and I were having a conversation. Nice gentleman, like him.
But see, what you just said, having the conversation.
You got to have it.
And that's what I think people are not doing, and we have to be better at, myself included. Having the conversation, being open to saying, I don't understand. Who's an ally that I can go to, or who's someone that I can talk to try to gain a better sense of understanding. I had a situation, within even our newsroom. I sent out an email to the staff just letting them know, if you have a question about a script, or if you are, feeling uneasy writing something, or you don't understand something, I'm happy to look it over. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying I'm a better writer than you. I'm not saying that I am the authority on all things things race relations, but I have a different perspective than someone else that might not look like me.
Oh, that's true.
And so many people have, taken me up on that offer, but there's also an opportunity to have a conversation. I've had a couple of conversations with people on our team that are just like, Talitha, can you help me understand why we have to say it this way? Why we have to incorporate X? Why is that part of the story important? And I said, because it's context. You have to put things in context, and you can't leave the context out, or else people won't get the full story. They won't get the full grasp of the root of why this is resonating with people. So context is key. And then also, making sure that we are communicating with each other. Because if you sit there and say, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to offend anyone, and I don't want to say, silence is also deadly.
Very deadly.
Silence is also hurtful.
Very.
So people keep asking me, what can I do? What should I say? I don't want to say anything. If I say anything, let me just say, how are you feeling? And I've had more people, literally, Kimbrough, asking me, how are you feeling? Than I'm like, I'm okay today. How are you feeling? It's almost like I want to do something, and I want to say something to let you know that I'm hearing you, I'm empathetic. Start the conversation with, how can I support you? How can I support our community? What can I do better? And that goes for me too, and I think that people take that as, what can I do? It's just white people. It's all people. And we have to communicate, because I know there's a segment of the population that's just feeling like, I'm nervous, I'm afraid. People are looking at me like I'm the enemy and I'm the good guy. I just want to help. So maybe if I march in a protest, I won't be seen that way. It's what you're doing at the very basic level every day. And I know, even I wanted to ask you, like, on that level within your department, I mean, what within the sheriff's office, what are you telling your team, especially when it comes to law enforcement, where many people, I'm going to be honest, they see you as the enemy, not you personally, but deputies, law enforcement, police as the enemy. Some communities have been so heavily policed that you roll through just a checkup and people are taking cover like, oh my gosh, they're coming to get me. So I guess it's two parts. One, what are you telling your team? And then two, what do you tell the community that you're doing within your department, within the sheriff's office, to say, we're not going to stand for racism. We're not going to stand for what happened to Mr. Floyd. That's not how we operate.
What I would tell you is that I walk around every day talking to team members here. I let them know how much I appreciate them. I also let them know that we're servants of the people. Not Clemens, Louisville, but all the people, the entire county. I let them know that we can never become entrenched in our isms, our political affiliation, racism, that we forget who we are and our purpose. We can't do that. If I find it to be true that you are mistreating or misrepresenting the brand, misrepresenting the integrity, misrepresenting the men and women that have served before you and the ones that will come after you, then you're no longer needed. Your services will no longer be needed. One of the things about the sheriff's office is that the sheriff's office can fire and hire at will, because, according to the Constitution of the sheriff's office, he or she can fire at will. Just, I don't like the color you got on today. Your services are no longer needed, period. Legally do that. And so I came to this position of wanting to be better, wanting to take it and be better than we were before I got here. When we came in here, we didn't let anyone go, right? We came in the door and we said, hey, we just want to do some things differently. We are more diverse than we've ever been in the history since 1852 in this sheriff's office. We have people of color in decision-making places on the command staff.
Wow.
We operate from the place of everybody has a voice. We operate from a place of being a part of the community. We operate from the place of We want you to produce the best product for the people that you can. We want you to be the best servant of the people that you can. We want you to operate without bias, because if you get caught operating of that, there's zero tolerance on that, zero tolerance. And they see that and they know that. They know that. We bring in training. We just brought a guy in, Josh, to do some training. I won't name the company. I don't want nobody to say I'm promoting a company or anything, but we bring trainers in from outside the community. We work closely with the training development, talent development, the county office. The county commissioners have been good to me. Love them. They have been good to me. If they feel they've been giving us what we need to produce the product that we are producing. And so we do that because we know we can be better than we were yesterday and even yesterday. And every day we come to the table on being better. We come to the table. Even now we talk about rewriting policies. We've written some new policies, even after what happened down there, right? A duty to intervene. Life is always first priority. Preservation of life. I mean, we've done a lot of things since Mr. Floyd. And so I think that we have to engage in conversation. That's one thing that we're doing. The other thing that I say that I would say to the community is that I welcome comments, concerns. Like you, I get a lot of letters that folk don't like me for skin tone. I get letters, people don't like the color tie I had on the day. I get letters, emails, they don't like the decisions. And so, but I welcome them. I call them back. I email them back. I have dialogues. I invite them to sit across the table from me and have conversation with me because I want their voice to be heard. Yeah. And I want to explain to them why we move like we move.
And I feel like sometimes people feel like their voices are not being heard. And when you just take that extra step to just listen so people can feel heard and be heard and take action behind that, to say, I see you, like I see you are seen. You know, we're not going to step over you. We're not going to step under you. We're going to walk with you. And I think that's what has been a big part of the change. And I hate to say this time around because we're in such a time of like, I feel like the communication breakdown has hindered relationships. It has hindered and it has led to ignorance, quite frankly.
True.
You know, you give the example of, you know, your son and his girlfriend. I mean, even as an adult, I'm going out to a restaurant and there is a degree of ignorance where people might walk in with my husband and they ask us, table for one, table for two, where's the rest of your party? Why? My husband is Lebanese, Irish, and Ukrainian. He has a totally different complexion than me. But because of what we've defined as what a couple should look like or what people should be together, we're making a reservation. We're going to look for a house. They're asking me, is that your realtor? No, that's my husband. You know, and those are things.
How do you feel when that happens? Being a black woman, because when people see your husband, they don't know that he's Lebanese, Irish, or they see a white man.
Right.
So how do you feel about that?
It's hurtful. It's extremely hurtful.
Do people look at you differently when you? Yes.
Black, white, purple. They all look at me different when they find if they come from a lens of either they've never been around an interracial couple before. They never expected, oh, Talitha Vickers, you're married to a white guy. Or even when I go into his job, oh my gosh, your wife is black. Like because people have been trained to think a certain way and they've only seen a certain way. It's hard for them to really grasp that there's another way. It's hard to grasp at, and that comes with communication. You know what I mean? That comes with just talking people through it, but then understanding that it's okay, and that's a conversation that, we have a boy and a girl. And, just seeing things that have been happening, especially regarding my son, who looks more like me than his dad, I feel like there's a heavy weight with everything that's going on, because that's a conversation I know I'm going to have to have. Absolutely. And I don't want someone else to have that conversation with him. I know there's going to be a comment at school or something's going to come up where his innocence or my daughter's innocence is going to be broke, because they don't see, oh, mommy's black and daddy's white. They don't see, oh, we have West Indian and we have Lebanese. Like they don't get that. They just see Elmo is red and Cookie Monster is blue, and they love them. They love us the same way. And it's hard. It's a conversation that I have had to have with my nephew, who is gigantic. You see him coming down the street and you're just like, wow. You think that he's like 25 years old and he's 17, because he's built like a linebacker and he is the softest teddy bear heart. But I've had to tell him, like, Jared, when you're walking to school, don't put your hood on. When you're walking to school, be careful. If somebody stops you, yes, sir, no, ma'am, law enforcement. If anyone asks you for anything, that's law enforcement. You listen to them, comply with what they're saying. And even now, I'm like, it's so hard because he's at that age and that level where it's just like he's having to really understand who he is. And I've done that with my nephew, and I know I'm going to have to cross that bridge with my son and my daughter. And it's hard when people just are so surface level and they just judge you based off of your skin rather than your talents, your gifts, and your abilities, so.
Well, I appreciate you coming by today, sharing with me. I'm going to give you one last question, then I'm going to close it with my thoughts.
All right, one question. You gotta.
Yeah, I've given you several. Yeah.
All right. We talked about law enforcement. We've talked about what you've been through. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about something that people might not necessarily look at you and know about you. I told you how people look at me and they expect a certain thing, but we have so many layers that we can pull back. So pull back a layer of Sheriff Kimbrough.
They would tell you, if you talk to people around here, I'm funny. I cut up a lot. I love shining shoes. That's therapeutic for me.
Shining shoes?
Yeah, I shine shoes every night. I do.
What does that do for you?
Oh, I love that. I love taking the dull shine and putting 2 or 3 coats on it, taking a silk rag, buffing it in, spraying a little water on it, then put a little coat on it, then buff it again.
You got a whole system? Let me find out.
Trust me, I do. If I got a lot on my mind, I go in the shoe closet and look on the wall and just start pulling shoes down, shining them. And I love doing that. They'll tell you sometimes when you come by the office in there, you might catch me shining my shoes in there. That's therapeutic to me. And so that's something that people don't know about me. I used to ride bicycles a lot. I have a bicycle in the office. I love to ride. I love to drive, love to read. I'm back in school. People probably don't know that about me.
Oh, for what? Can you tell us?
Oh, yeah. I'm working on a doctoral degree in organizational leadership. Having my master's, and I'm back in school trying to finish up a doctorate degree.
Wow.
So there's a lot of layers to Bobby besides this. I don't sleep well at night. Probably average 4 hours of sleep. That's a good night. I love the job. I love the opportunity that the people have given me to serve. I love this place. I love the stress that comes with it. It motivates me. It pushes me. I don't know what I'd do without the stress of this job.
That's a heavy weight that you carry, though, in our community. And I will tell you, I know, we're wrapping up here, but a lot of people don't realize that you do so much behind the scenes, seen and unseen, but more. I've had more people after meeting you tell me, oh, I believe his name was like Daniel over at Cabarrus, the restaurant. And he was like, Sheriff Kimbrough came by and we had some people on our staff and they didn't get to do their graduation. So he performed like a little mini graduation for them. Like that's things that's not, you're out there boasting and on a resume, but you do things to connect our community on a deeper level that people don't realize. You're not walking around, I am the sheriff bow.
I don't even say I'm the sheriff. I say I'm Bobby Kimbrough. I think that a sheriff is more than somebody that enforces the law. The sheriff is an ambassador. A sheriff has to bring people together. What I do, I don't advertise it every day. I don't. My publicist, Ms. Howell, our media director, she has to force me to talk about what I do sometimes because I just don't feel the need to do it sometimes. But I'm learning in this world that I'm in. People want to know what you're doing. That's true. So we do that. But what I will leave the people with this is that for such a time as this, and I want you to know I appreciate you coming by, for being transparent and opening up and sharing some things with you. But for such a time as this that we're in, it's going to require all of us to step up to the plate. It's going to require all of us to get through these things that we're in, because right now we're in a time that is a defining moment in our history in this county. You've heard me talk about many times, and I say it all the time, about this thing about time and turn. It could be your time but not your turn but not your time. But every now and then, life will align to where's your time and your turn. And that time and turn is now in our history, in this country, in this county, in this community, that we have got to step up to the plate and make some changes. We've got to look at the two pandemics, how we do and view things, racial inadequacies. We've got to look at racial racism. We've got to look at social issues, because social issues have the ability to become criminal issues. And so we've got to change the whole dynamic, the way we've been doing things. We've become habitual in our movement.
Yeah, complacent.
Yeah. So I want us to start to look at this differently. Let's figure out something. Together we are strong. Together we're better. We can get through this. We will get through this. It's going to take conversations like you and I have had. It's going to have real conversations, and it's going to require everybody to get involved. Those at the newsroom, those at the barbershop, those at the liquor house, those at every part of this community. We've got to get involved and realize that we're in this together. As always, I love this city. I love this county. I love you, Ms. Vickers, for coming by. I love this country. And as always, thank you for watching us at Off the Cuffs. Thank you.